Okay, I wanted to talk this video about a criminal case. It's about the Colorado husband who killed his entire family, his pregnant wife and his two little daughters of 3 and 4 years old. This was in August 2018, and his name is Chris Watts. It's interesting to see how an apparently loving father turned into narcissistic psychopath. There's a lot of home videos of this family on the internet, and what caught my attention is that in a lot of these videos you see him with his family. He looks like the perfect loving family man. He always is interacting with his little daughters. He's got them on the shoulders, he's talking to them, he's lifting them up. There's a lot of physical contact between him and the children. They look happy on the family pictures. I can show you one right now. I'll show you 1 second. And so it's such a strange thing that somebody could suddenly turn in something so evil. And what belongs with the traits of a narcissistic psychopath is that they have a big feeling of self-worth. They think they're very important. They think that everybody has to admire them, look up to them, and they have a lack of empathy, which is, in this case, obvious. You know, otherwise you wouldn't wipe away your whole family just for the sake of having an affair with another woman. They need this admiration, but where does the person change from the loving father to the point that he thinks, I'm going to kill my family? I mean, what happens in their heads? What I notice on the videos is that he's a pathological liar. Like in the beginning, he loved to give interviews when his family was still missing. And even though he was standing there cross-armed and you could see the lack of emotion, he tried to lie himself out of everything. But the thing is, he hadn't really organized it very well, the crime. He made big mistakes. And what I think is, how can you be so naive, how can you be so dumb, in a way, to think something like this out and think you can get away with it? How can you live also with the idea, I put my family away, I killed them, and I start something new with a new woman? I mean, what's going on in their minds? How can they even consider getting away with that? So you have to be really naive or live in a fantasy world, because most of the time these cases come out. And what would have happened if he got away with it and he would have started a relationship with his mistress? If she would have gotten pregnant after a few years, would he have done the same with her? These are all questions that we'll never get an answer for. But what intrigues me, I studied a little bit these cases, is that on all the little family films, he looks like the perfect daddy. You know, from the outside, you only see smiling family pictures. It looks like he loved the children. And how can you put yourself first and wipe away your whole family? How can you do that? How can you make that decision? I mean, how long was he thinking about doing this? How long was this going on in his head? And how can you do that and think you can get away with that? It's something that I really don't understand. So with these psychopaths, they have complete lack of empathy. They also have lack of remorse. And often they don't want to take responsibility for what they've done. It's like they live in a fantasy world, and that it's all self-centered. It's all about them. But I have to say, like, they must be very naive somewhere as well, to think that nobody will notice and that there is no other way to get out of a certain situation than hurt your loved ones, because there were so many ways out for this man, and he chose to do evil. And how can he feel himself more important than the life of his 2 daughters, his wife, and his unborn child? How can he think that he's more important than his whole family? You know, what kind of person are you then? You're a monster. You know, you're somebody with no feelings. But how could this man first be a loving father on the videos and lift his children and put them on the neck and interact with them, and this is so contradictory, and it just intrigues me how people can hide what is really inside of them, which is the scary thing. You never know who you have inside, in front of you, you know, even after so many years of marriage. And he probably was a good husband for a lot of years, but he turned out to be the worst nightmare, to be the biggest monster, to be everybody's worst nightmare. And so there's a lot of study to be done on this kind of personalities, and to see what triggers people to do what they do. And I just hope that some of these people will learn from this and will stop their evil thoughts and get help. Because you can't get away with that. I mean, how can you even live with the feeling that you buried your whole family somewhere, that you threw your kids in old tanks, like your 3 and 4-year-old kid? How can you think that you have a life after that, while you could have gotten a divorce? You know, there's so many other ways out. If you don't like somebody, get out of the relationship. You know, don't hurt them. Get out of the relationship. Get a life and leave everybody else. Respect other people's life. Leave everybody else in peace. And I feel sorry for his family, because I think somewhere, if you look at all those videos, you see that there must have been some love for his children at a certain point. And what goes wrong in that mind, in that brain, to suddenly switch from a loving father into this monster? You know, what makes somebody trigger like that? So this is just, I'm speaking out what everybody else thinks, and so it just gives you something to think about. And in the end, they don't get away with it. He will rot in a cell for the rest of his life, you know, in fear of his own life, for other inmates trying to kill him or beat him up or whatever. So in the end, this is what happens to most of these people, and they should see the reality. And people who think like that should see the reality, because this is how they end up, all alone. You know, they can't manipulate anybody in prison anymore, you know. They're just gonna rot in their own misery that they created. That's it.